Hello and welcome back to the Villa Fodder podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, before we get into it, I can only apologise to both you and the viewers for the lack of a podcast on the weekend. I wasn't about, and it just didn't feel right, even if I was about anyway. Yeah, I mean, we may as well start there and get it out of the way, mate, because there's been plenty to talk about today. And this has just been a crazy day. We've just got done watching the Barcelona Inter Milan game in the Champions League, and I mean, thank God we didn't have that side of the draw, and we could just enjoy that as a neutral and not having to worry about us facing those in the final. Thankfully, that is not a problem anymore. But yeah, how are you doing, mate?
I'm good, man. I'm good. A lot better than I was doing Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, or probably Tuesday, to be honest with you. Time is a healer and all that. And yeah, I think it's going to be a strange old atmosphere 12:30 on Saturday at Villa Park. I've never really known, honestly, like post relegation. I don't think I've known a result kind of sit and fester like this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like just one that like you can't really get over. And look, we've had it very good as Villa fans over the last few years. And just reaching this stage of the competition is an achievement in itself, considering, where we were just a couple of years ago, really, where we could barely get past the third round of the FA Cup to reach the semi-final. But I think what's things, mate, is that we've had two very good chances to see Villa lift the trophy pass us by now in the last couple of years with the Conference League and now this FA Cup. And look, that City side in an FA Cup final on a big old Wembley pitch is pretty ominous. So look, if we had got to the final, could I say hand on heart that we would have gone and won it? Probably not. But realistically, it's as good a chance as you're going to get. It really is, and it felt the same with the Conference League defeat. But this is a completely different kettle of fish. I think it's the scoreline more than anything. But yeah, I've not really known a result like this. Yeah, as I said, post relegation, even playoff final defeats kind of just sit and linger like this, to be honest with you, mate.
Yeah, it's the best place to win and the worst place to lose. And if we're being totally honest with ourselves, I obviously I felt confident going into the game. Hindsight tells you that that was probably more delusion than optimism, but Villa Filler podcast, we're always glass half full. We're never glass half empty. I don't think we either of us, mate, underestimated how mighty that the opportunity was. Certainly, given the fact that prior to this, Palace had obviously beaten us three times this season already, which is mad. Now it's four. Emery's never beaten Palace or Ollie Glasner, and yeah, it's something we've still got to live with and deal with. To try and in the thought of just let's try and move on and bury it. I think the lineup was wrong. Again, it's easy to say with hindsight, but there were some questionable decisions there. I think even as critical as I have been of Mings at points during this season, I've happily come on here and put my hands up and lauded Tyrone for the performances that we've seen over the past few months. And yeah, he should have played. He should have absolutely played. But you know, it, it's one of them where like, does it make that much of a difference anyway? Because Villa just didn't turn up. This is a game where we didn't turn up, and it's a shame that it takes you to 60 odd minutes for Leon Bailey to come on, for Jacob Ramsey to come on, for Ian Matson to come on, for and Ross Barkley to a lesser extent as well, for Villa for you to really look at Villa and think, wow, we're actually giving this a go, and we've got some people out there that seem to be putting in a bit of an effort. I hate to come on here and say, oh, they didn't put any effort in, blah blah blah, because like a lot of the time it's just not true. But the changes in that game, at least to me, really did feel like it showed the levels of disparity between the people who started versus those that came on. And I hope Leon Bailey's doing okay, because he deleted his Instagram before the game, is either before or after. And it's a shame because I would have loved to have DM'd him or replied to one of his stories or put in his comments how brilliant he was on the day. And again, this is the Leon Bailey filler at times. We love Leon Bailey. Um, but yeah, I think it just goes to show how quickly narratives and stuff can change, and I hope Leon's in a good headspace because clearly somebody who is preempt. It seems like he's somebody who's preempted something there by sort of removing himself from social media. But it's always next year, mate. That's the beauty of football and cup competitions and all of that. And somebody had rightfully pointed out that Newcastle got themselves to Carabao Cup final a couple of years ago in the early Eddie Howe reign. Obviously lost that. I think this feels that much worse because Newcastle have gone and won the Carabao this season, right? And they're obviously a team that we sort of are competing with at the moment. So there's that element to it, but there's not a lot else we can do now, mate. I think what bothers me, and this is, I mean, it's calling out the players, but really it's calling out the players' social media managers. Is the and Dean, I'm digging out because it's the only tweet that I remember seeing, and it really sort of get him a backup because I really tried not to be on social media on the weekend. Was Luke Dean saying that there's 4 more finals coming up this season, obviously referring to the 4 Premier League games that we have, and it just feel like I understand there's like a positive sentiment, and it's really difficult for whether it's a player or they've got somebody who's running their socials for them. It's a nightmare scenario when you lose because there's this obligation almost to post and to address it, but also to sort of try and bury it. And it just feels like that there's this disconnect with the fans because I hate that we have to come on here, mate. And I appreciate I've been talking for a little while here, so I will pass this back to you, don't worry. I hate that we come on here and talk about, the need to finish in the top 4, just how important it is for the club. I hate that, but I also acknowledge how important it is. But at the same time, if we'd have uh, won the FA Cup by some short miracle and maybe only qualified for the Conference League or maybe even for, I don't know, you qualify for the lowest form of European competition. I think we all know that the squad would be savage. That's something we're going to come on to a bit later on in terms of transfers and rumours and whatnot. But you can't take that away from us. And, certainly for us, mate, being 25, 26, Villa, this is the best Villa have been in our lifetime. Certainly that we can sort of remember and like we're going to remember this forever, this period of supporting Villa. Very clearly, it's not like, Champions League when we were like, there's like the Moscow, all that when we were kids. So, it feels like there's a little disconnect. It's kind of like, I'm almost like, I'm sort of done with the season now. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's hard to
Yes.
care. And I shouldn't say that as a Villa podcaster because you guys should care about, you're tuning in because you care what we have to say about the club, and we obviously love the club and you love the club as well. But I, it's kind of, it's taken the foot like leave the football before the football leaves you. That's how I'm feeling about this season.
Well, I think that brings me on to my kind of main discussion point from this result, mate. Given that I agree that we're kind of, yeah, old news at this point. I think everything that could be said has been said. I think everyone is feeling the same about it. I think, it doesn't need us 4 or 5 days after the event to come on a podcast and talk about how bad the performance was. But if I am going to look at this, I say positively, but my main takeaway from it is this is where Unai Emery earns his salt. Can he pick this bunch up and get them fired up for what has to be, if we are going to stand a chance of Champions League qualification for next season, an immaculate end to the season? It has to be.
Yeah.
We have to win every game between now and Old Trafford on the final day, and then go and win there too, if we're going to even stand a sniff of getting in there. And so that's what I'm really, really excited to see now. I say excited, interested to see now is what is the performance like 12:30 on Saturday? What is the Villa Park crowd like? And they owe the fans a performance, because I think the one thing that was disappointing and most disappointing from the game is that you go to Wembley and there's going to be a chance. You're going to have a chance. There's going to be a ball and it's going to drop to someone and someone's going to have, and it just never came. And we were kind of just waiting for this moment. And you look at the Mateta penalty that goes wide, and you think that's the moment that Villa should capitalise on. We have to build on that. And it just never really came. And that kind of dejected feeling as we kind of sank closer towards the 90th minute, realizing it was never going to happen, has put a real cloud over this past few days. And there's been some interesting stuff that, we can talk about in terms of transfer rumors. It looks like Emi Martinez and Leon Bailey have been subject to interest from the Saudi Pro League, which is quite interesting, as you say, given that Leon has kind of been out on the doldrums for a little while, but came on and looked really, really bright. I think he and Ian Matson probably are the only players that can kind of hold their head high from the weekend. And I think what we do have now is a chance to kind of end this season in the mold of the guys that we know are going to be around for next season. And so is it more Daniel Marlin minutes? Is it more Ian Matson minutes? Do you know what I mean? And like we can start to kind of give these guys a run out. If we don't think Luca Dean is going to be here next season, if we don't think Leon Bailey is going to be next season, like let's give the guys who are the minutes, let them settle in and prove themselves to this club, because I do think that we need a bit of an injection. And look, like I do think that there is a part of me that says that we faced our kryptonite on Saturday. As you know, there's all the stats, all the numbers in the world. Ismail Assar, Dean Henderson, never beaten a Dean Henderson team, never had a game where Ismail Assar has played against Villa and not scored. Had we played any of the other 19 teams in the Premier League on that day, like would it have been a different game? I think yeah, I really, really do. I think yeah. That is not an excuse, but yeah, we do have to really kind of get up for it now. Time moves quickly. It's time is a healer as well. I think it's a shame that we've been waiting for a 7-day wait between games for so long, and it has to come after this result. We've had some amazing games and quick turnarounds, bouncing from the PSG game at home straight into Newcastle at home, and maybe we could have done with an extra week's rest there, but has to go after the 3-0 semi-final defeat. And yeah, we kind of go into this, and there's a weird sense around the club with, transfer rumours are starting to heat up. Chris Heck as well, I think, is the other big talking point, mate. I'm sure we'll get onto. He's left his role as head of business operations at Aston Villa, or will leave his role, at the end of the season. And it's just kind of put a strange cloud over the club going into Saturday. And as we both know, mate, football's a simple game. If you want to change the mood at a football club, there's one really, really easy thing that you can do, and that's win football matches.
But how easy is it? How easy is it? That's the question. It wouldn't surprise, we've got form, and I felt, I don't want the last thing I want is for anyone to come onto this podcast and think that either you or I lack integrity for, switching up on what we say. I still believe that we can get Champions League football. I feel it deep down, but it just feels like it's such a hill to climb now. And as you say, we have to be flawless. I just pulled up the Transfermarkt website while you were talking, mate, to sort of have a look at our full squad. And this is probably a podcast episode in itself that we can record next week at some point. In terms of like who stays, who goes, blah blah blah. But I was looking at the list, right? Again, I'm on Transfermarkt, and I'm looking at Daniel Marlin, and his name on Transfermarkt is Daniel Painting, and I'm like, what's that? So I've got a Google translated Marlin in Google Translate just to see what it'd come up with, and apparently it's German for painting. I think I've been on the German Transfermarkt rather than the English one. So there's my mistake there, but I just thought I'd share that to try and raise spirits. Mate.
Interesting nugget.
Daniel Painting should play. I want to see more of Daniel Painting. But yeah, I mean, where do we start? Should we start with the transfers, mate? Do we start with Chris Heck? Because again, like this could literally be like 7 podcasts. Chris Heck.
Yes, I think so.
I've been sitting on this for a while. Again, I think for long-time listeners, our views are pretty clearly documented on Chris Heck and his role, his contribution, and what he's done. Off the field, in terms of of alienating aspects of the fan base and pricing people out and all of this kind of stuff. And it's I think the difficulty it is genuinely like a really nuanced topic, Chris Heck's job, but like in terms of my opinion on him and the job he's done and the sort of the consequences of his actions, I'm not a fan. And I think it's easy to sort of sit here and say, oh, well, he's done a phenomenal job. He's brought Adidas to the club. He is, he's led redevelopment of the North Stand, of the new music venue, which the name has slipped from my mind at the moment. The Warehouse, yeah. Um, there's all sorts he's done. The commercial deals as well. Um, without sounding like Roy Keane, that's your job. And I think there's a degree of how much of the club's financial success can and should be attributed to him when almost all of the significant revenue has been generated by Unai Emery getting the absolute most out of the 25, 26 players that he has that kick an inflated plastic ball around for 90 minutes twice a week. That's where the real money's come from. And I think, I've seen some people say in terms of like, oh, like, look, but there's all the concerts, like there's Black Sabbath, there's Ozzy Osbourne's like interested in Villa. Like, I mean, as far as I understand, Ozzy Osbourne's never been interested in the Villa. So, that Geezer Butler we know is obviously a massive Villa fan in Black Sabbath, but the Ozzy thing's kind of come out of nowhere. And call me a hypocrite. I've got tickets to see Kendrick Lamar at Villa Park in the summer. Call me a hypocrite, okay? I'm contributing to PSR. You can't tell me that I'm not contributing to the club's PSR when I paid £150 for a Kendrick Lamar and Scissor ticket at Villa Park. So I hope we get a good cut of that as a football club. But yeah, I think it's like a layup. His job's almost like a layup. As long as you've got the contacts, which somebody of his pedigree and the amount of time that he's spent within the business of sport should have. As long as we're doing as well as we are on the pitch, there should be no excuse for missing KPIs in terms of revenue and all of that kind of stuff, especially when you are taking sports for a bit of a ride in terms of price hikes, which are going to happen. But, we're living in a cost of living crisis. All the hospitality that he's put into the ground as well, which I can't necessarily comment on the quality because I haven't enjoyed that myself. But it's certainly not something that I will enjoy, I don't think, because it's not something that's aimed for me or within my sort of price range. So I'm hesitant to say that this is a good thing that he's leaving because somebody has to do the job, right? And again, I think one of the other things that is always lost on people is Chris Heck hasn't just decided to come in and sort of twiddle his thumbs and go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to extort my loyal fans. The KPIs are set by the owners, and Nassef and Wes have this sort of bulletproof image when it comes to how their contributions to our fine football club. And whilst I do genuinely within my whole heart believe that they have Aston Villa Football Club's best interest at heart because they've invested £600 million of their own money, being the businessmen that they are, they have targets to meet. And again, it's all understandable. I guess it's just how you approach it and the lack of compassion and the lack of even pretending to assimilate with your, I'm not even going to call us fans, I'm going to call us customers because that's how Chris Heck views us. We're not privy with the AGM stuff. We're not privy with the Villa Trust or whoever it is that even does that anymore. I mean, certainly when we were way back in the day, more involved in the Villa community, like with the Holte Twitter account and doing all that kind of stuff. Again, we weren't really ever involved then. It kind of felt like a bit of a sort of I'm trying to think of the word. It felt like a bit of a clique that we weren't a part of. But obviously, these AGMs, they go and they represent us as the fans, so they do have our sort of best interests at heart. But again, I've rambled on for a long time here, mate. But long story short, it's not necessarily a good thing, but I'm happy.
It's difficult. It's difficult. I really don't know. I am delivering a terrible podcast here because, again, I'm going to talk about a topic that I don't know how to feel about. Um, on the one side, I have sympathy with Chris Egg because he was clearly handed quite a difficult brief, I think, when he came in, because you're right in saying that, look, we've got this amazing football team. It's doing really, really well, but it's costing a hell of a lot of money. We're spending a lot on players. We're spending a lot on wages. We're fighting on more fronts than ever before. There's more games. Like, the expenditure of the club has probably never been higher than it has in the last kind of 12 months or so. Your job is to sell enough stuff to balance that out. And that's clearly the brief he was given. And it's no small task, considering that this club, when he came in, was a long way behind the rest of the Premier League and the rest of Europe's elite in terms of other ways of generating revenue. And I don't like talking about football clubs this way, but it's true. We can't hide that. When you look back at what the Villa store used to be, it's kind of laughable. The kind of match day experience was almost non-existent in terms of places to go in around Villa Park on a match day. There weren't. It has changed a lot, and for better and for worse. I think inside Villa Park, I've found this season a little bit tough to go to because of the amount of like advertising hoardings that have been added to the ground, particularly when it's those like big red like Batano ads.
Yeah.
And there's just like those things are literally a constant reminder when you're at football matches of kind of what this club has been forced to become because of where we are in the league. And so I do sympathize with him. Where I do think he can be critiqued is that I don't think it's right for someone in his role to. It kind of felt like he wanted to be the main character.
Yeah.
I don't like owners, like senior commercial figures at football clubs, like trying to play the pal on, like, like whenever, Villa would do something and like we'd tweet out we've got a new deal, or we'd be like, up the Villa, like, look what I've done. Like, look how great this is for this club, all because of me. I don't know whether I'm being a bit cynical. Maybe I am. Maybe it was genuine, but that's kind of how it felt to me. Is that like it was just someone that like very, very verbally and very publicly wanted the support of the fan base, and inherently there's nothing wrong with that. But one thing that I think Nassef and Wes have done really, really well since they joined Villa Park is just stayed away from it. And they've become some of the best owners that we've ever had at this football club because they have let the hard, cold facts do the talking. The financial reports, how much they're investing, and ultimately how well this club is performing. That's the only barometer we've had to judge these guys.
Yeah.
We don't judge them based on what they say in the press. We don't judge them by what they say on social media. We judge them by how much are you putting in for this football club and where are we in the league. And to that fault, they've been flawless and they are loved because of it. Chris Heck, on the other hand, had a kind of complete flip side of that, where it was very obvious what his intentions were, and he was kind of very public in wanting adoration for it, which is where I think he went wrong. The grass isn't always greener, I think it's fair to say. Christian Perslow left under a very similar cloud. We were all like, oh my God, it can't get any worse than Christian Perslow. And I'm not saying it did, but did it get any better in terms of the person that we had in that position at the football club? I think it's fair to say no. So, we don't know who is going to come in next. They could make Chris Hett look like a saint. And, I'm kind of wary of that too.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, difficult to know how to feel. Good work and bad work. But I do think that, the kind of lasting legacy of this Champions League run for many will be that they weren't there.
Yeah.
Which is like, I do kind of mean that. Like I saw a Palace fan today actually talking about I don't know if you saw their ticket prices for the FA Cup final, but Cat A tickets in the lower tier were £120 or something like that. And that Palace fan quoted it, and it was getting quite a lot of support saying, in a few years, if we win the FA Cup, you'll you won't remember how much you paid for your ticket. All that you remember is that you were there. And I couldn't help but feel like that's a very easy point to make if you can afford the ticket.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you can't, all you're ever going to remember is I couldn't afford to go. And that's how many will remember this Champions League run. And I think that's kind of sad.
It's a shame, mate. It really is a shame.
And oh, sorry, mate, just to jump back. The atmosphere at Wembley
Crap.
at the weekend was terrible.
Tifo.
The tifo was terrible.
Embarrassing.
Again, club funded stuff. And you look at the Palace end, and you see a very different relationship between fans and the club, and it comes through there, right? Like, I saw someone saying, would the atmosphere have been better if the tickets were half the price? The people that have been going to these finals for all this time could afford to go. You get a different kind of clientele, and that's not criticizing any of, I was one of them, and I can't say I made a whole lot of noise on Saturday, so I direct criticism inwards as well. But yeah, like you can literally see right there in Wembley, just before kickoff, about 5 o'clock on Saturday, the difference between the connections the fan base hold with the clubs in real time.
Yeah, and I mean, I saw the GoFundMe link for that tifo that Palace did as well, and you've got players donating to it. Chris Richards, Dean Henderson, a couple of others were chucking a couple bob in. So, it's a big respect to them. But yeah, I think that fundamentally the difference is like the soft skills. I don't think Chris Heck was, although clearly wanted to be adored by the fan base, I don't think he ever attempted to endear himself to them. And I think one thing that can be said about Purslow, and again, we've both been extremely critical at times of Purslow under his tutelage, is he had the soft skills, and probably more importantly, understood the sport. Right, he has that cultural understanding of what this sport is and what it means to us. And Christian Purslow is no working class hero, but he understands that football is a working man sport. And I again, regardless of how people feel about Christian Purslow, I do think that there was always that respect between him and the fans for the job that he was doing. And he clearly, I think he clearly just respected the fans because he knew that we're the life and soul of the football club. Didn't expect to be talking about Christian Purslow on a Wednesday night, but here we are in 2025. Christian, I hope you're well. We'd love to have you on. I'm sure could even be an opening for you at the moment. But I mean, I do think it's quite interesting. I know we have to wrap up soon, man. We still have plenty to talk about, but I do find it quite interesting that that Heck's moving to LIV Golf. For those who are maybe not aware, that's obviously Saudi Public Investment Fund Golf, who are sort of taking on the PGA. So I know certainly in my household, within my family, we've certainly celebrated Heck's departure, and I'm not surprised entirely that he's ended up at LIV Golf.
Make of it what you will, right?
Absolutely. If the shoe fits, eh? If the shoe fits.
Can I just one? Have you seen? Since we're doing a roundup of ex senior staff at Aston Villa, have you seen what Keith Winers is doing these days?
No, I haven't. What is Keith? What?
Do you know the bottom of the barrel transfer chatter site Football Insider?
Oh my!
But he writes Football Insider.
No, he doesn't. Keith. This is maybe
ran
transfer rumours.
He ran a piece, Aston Villa on thin ice as UEFA ban looms, big red lights are flashing, and he's done this big commercial piece for Football Insider on Villa's finances. And I will leave that there because I mean, what more else do you need to say about that? But we're seeing real contrasting fortunes over the last few years for those with high-ranking positions at Aston Villa, and I think it's fair to say that Keith Winers has probably fared the worst.
And well, Dr. Tony's in a gulag somewhere, isn't he? So I guess it could be worse. It could be worse. You never know. But yeah, I mean the grass isn't always greener, mate, and I guess that leads us on nicely to the transfer talk, which we will have to gloss over somewhat. But Telegraph. Do you know what? When you see a tweet that's co-signed you've got the link up, you've got Matt Law and John Percy. That's it. It's it's real. There's
That's
something
Villa
there.
bat signal, right?
Yeah,
At least, yeah.
shit's about to go down when you see that these guys have come together to report on something, and Emi and Bailey lined up for Saudi moves. They've got suitors in the Saudi Pro League. Again, this is definitely a podcast for us to cover at some point this week or next week, mate, in terms of ingoings and outgoings and who stays and who goes. I think I said like 3 or 4 podcasts ago, I felt that there were 5 players that were invincible. I think I said Emi, Konsa, I think I said Kamara, Rogers, JJ. I'm revisiting my list, and there's only one that's invincible, and I believe that's Boubacar Kamara. And there is an asterisk there because his contract's up in 18 months. And if a new one isn't signed, then he's absolutely anyone's game. I think we try and get a fee for him before he enters that final year. But I mean, Emi to Saudi, it doesn't feel right, and I mean neither does Bailey either, to be honest. But I can see with the sort of troubles that Leon has had with the fan base, I think he would probably accept whatever move wherever just to get out, which is sad because we love Leon. But in terms of Emi to Saudi, it's just like it doesn't feel right. But so I feel like we have to knock this castle down to build it up, and we clearly have to with FFP, PSR, and all that. But it just seems like a shame, doesn't it, mate?
Yeah, it does. It does. I think neither player has their stock ever been lower since they both respectively joined the club. Emi has made his fair share of mistakes this season during the running, has also made his fair share of brilliant saves. I don't think he covered himself in glory on Saturday either. And sometimes when you play Football Manager, you do a little dance when a Saudi Pro League team comes in to buy a player, because you're probably going to get a higher fee there than you would if any other club tried to buy that player. And that's probably how I feel definitely about Leon Bailey. Emi Martinez, I would be really, really disappointed to see him go. I don't judge him by the last few games. I judge him by the past kind of 2 or 3 years, whatever it's been since he signed, which have been incredible. He's the best goalkeeper I've ever seen Villa have in my lifetime. And him as a personality and what he's promised the club, I think I would be a little bit disappointed if he went to Saudi Arabia. But then again, it's the money, and we'll see what happens there. One, I think, is far more likely than the other, but it could be the escape route that Leon Bailey is looking for sure.
The difficulty is Saudi are the only teams that are paying the fees, and after the 12 months that Emi has had, do you get a full fee? I don't know, but I don't want it to end this way for either of them, especially Emi. I feel like he's probably got a big move left in him still. But guys, let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, like the podcast, follow if you haven't, and up the Villa.